I'm Grant Gibson. I'm an architect, founder of CAMES Gibson.
15 years ago, Grant helped to design this house. It's called the Sanders House. It sits somewhat conspicuously within a residential neighborhood in central Missouri. This is no ordinary neighborhood, though. It lines a bluff that cascades down to the river below. This house, though, is made mostly of concrete and features an awesome skylight, some great art, and of course a beautiful view. He designed it while working with an architect named Doug Garofalo. Here's a picture of Doug with images of the Sanders house behind him. This photograph was displayed at Doug's funeral from 2011. He passed away tragically from brain cancer at the age of 52. Doug was a force.
Doug Garofalo's practice represents the various ways in which we work as architects today, though he's exceptional for excelling in so many.
Doug Garofalo asked me to intern and worked with him for 5 years after that. Within 2009, I left the office and went out on my own.
We're currently inside the attic of a house Grant and his family just moved into a few weeks ago. It's located in Oak Park, Illinois, and he's in the process of turning the space into a home office. To add a little context, it's often an important rite of passage for architects to publicly transcend or at least step outside of the shadow of their mentors. That's especially true here in Chicago, where figures like Stanley Tigerman made collages of Mies van der Rohe buildings sinking in Lake Michigan. Stanley loved Mies, but he needed to move forward, and he believed that the city needed to as well. But about 3 years ago, Grant received a text message from the owner of the Sanders house. She wanted to know if he would design an addition to the house.
Largely, that was driven by a desire to be able to spend their entire life in the house. The existing home is a very vertical house, but now as they're starting to get older and thinking about the rest of their lives, they realize they need a horizontal level.
The thing is that Grant is getting older too. What appealed to him and his boss about 15 years ago is different. In simple terms, Doug was famous for building with angles of all sorts. In fact, he helped design the first building ever that was fully conceived and drawn in the computer. It's full of angles. Now, Grant really likes circles. And I mean, he loves circles. He likes circles more than anyone I've ever met. Just look at how he likes to hide them inside of pyramids.
Essentially a different volume inside there that's just different. Nothing that you would ever expect to see given the nature of the overall form.
So how can, in 2021, Grant, a lover of all things circles, design an addition to a house originally done 15 years ago with his angle-loving mentor? How can you respect the original work, its creator and client, while staying true to the development of his own voice and vision? Turns out it's not that easy. Grant dug deep to reconsider the original vision of the house. Part of that meant sifting through the old models and drawings.
The main stuff should be in here. There's this. Well, this is a model of the house they originally owned that we were supposed to do an addition to. And then we realized it was just easier for them to buy the neighboring house and tear it down and build a new house. That goes there. The idea, though, and it is still pretty accurate to what it was at the end of the day, which is two concrete walls that kind of bracket everything on the inside. And at the front, there's a little gap that allows the entry and then access up to a roof garden. And then on the back, there's a big view out to the river. I think this comes apart, yeah. And then inside, it's just 2 floors. The lower floor has a kind of step up so that there could be a carport underneath all the living area. There's a double height library on one side, and then up above is 2 bedrooms. Down in the basement, there's really 2 basements with an exterior breezeway that runs through it. So the idea is that when you're standing at the front door, there'd be an exterior stair that would go down to a little kind of hidden patio. And it works out that when you stand at the front door, the slope of the ground works out so that you see just enough of the river to know that it's down there. Here, this is my favorite stuff, where you have my notes and you have Doug's notes. Oh yeah, Doug wanted a straight line. I wanted something that was angled even more boxy, and we ended up with somewhere in between. He got a little bit of a straight line, and I got an angle. We thought we were producing a geode that would be complete, that there'd be nothing you could ever do with the thing. It is what it is. The idea that you would add an addition to the concrete, off the concrete walls, seemed impossible. They contain the house, but they also make it impossible for you to ever alter those sides of the house. The mistake is the back's so open that you can add to it, which is what we're doing now. Yeah.
Normally, a project of this size would take about a couple weeks to develop a schematic design. Grant spent an entire year developing his scheme.
So the brief of the project really is in the basement level and trying to unify those two parts, add a small addition onto the back, and that then changes the nature of what the upper floor balcony or deck is that looks out beyond. What we're doing is we're tearing out those two interior walls that right now produce that Y breezeway, and we're infilling that with an addition that comes around. Then once we get up to the ground floor level, is giving us an opportunity to reimagine that roof deck. So this is probably the most distinctive part of the design, which is that we've taken what was just a simple offset of the window wall on the back, and now we've taken the profile of the two concrete walls, produced a large arc that wraps around and extends the deck another 8 feet out into the air, and then added another small Juliet balcony off of that balcony that gives somebody a kind of secret view back out to the street that's out here on this direction. The arc and of the balcony very much was an idea of adding a hat or a hairdo or a beard or some other element to the profile of the plan that helped keep it unified while at the same time made it very clear that whatever was going on back there was different than what was going on the front.
Grant invited me along to visit the construction, so we headed to O'Hare Airport and boarded a tiny plane from Missouri. Grant needed to do all the things that architects are supposed to do while visiting their designs while they're being constructed. It's called construction administration. He inspected the work. This involves a lot of pointing. He helped solve a few problems that came up during construction. This included drawing solutions on the walls for the contractor to follow, and stringing some blue tape at strategic angles to visualize how a painting can fit within an alcove.
There. All right, see if that'll stay.
I also finally got to see the house and its stepped interior, the unfinished spaces of the new basement, and of course the incredible deck. We also got to meet the owner. She showed Grant some of the furniture ideas she's been working on to furnish the new spaces, and he offered his thoughts. She shared what life was like in the house.
You know, it's kind of it's a refuge, you know, it really is. We've been inspired by travel and come back and said, oh, wouldn't it be neat if we, you know, kind of had this in our house.
And proudly brought out a magazine that featured the original design.
So cool is it starts like this amazing, let's talk about housing stock all over the world. Brazil and Switzerland and Missouri.
Then I asked her what she thought about the new addition.
I think it's like Grant said, it's strange to think that you could put roundness, you know, in this house, but it just sort of, I think it's hard to imagine now the house. I think it completes it. We'll put it that way. If you look at this grayscale here and the back, I mean, and then you see what's happening now in the house, it's just more elegant. It seems like it's almost like it was waiting for that to be added to it, which may sound crazy, but I mean, it's like this was part one, this was part two, now it's whole.
Well, yeah, don't try to add an addition to the rounds. Like that's going to be really hard.
No, we're done.
Remember that problem from before, the whole circle angle thing? Well, of course it's more complicated than that, and the owner knew this. The angles came from a desire for buildings to look difficult, to wear their imperfections and the competing demands placed on them as badges of honor. Fractured angles are incomplete. There is no center, and there is no edge. There's no end. Grant's love of circles comes from a desire for buildings to look a little more buttoned up and complete. They have a clear center and a boundary. They don't go on forever. They provide neater packages that iron out the complications. It turns out this house has been waiting for Grant's addition all along. What seemed a struggle and even a conflict between old and new resolved into a beautiful dialogue in the end. Perhaps architects don't need to be so concerned about outdoing their mentors. Rather, their work might be like an open-ended question that new generations can answer each in their own way. Or maybe that's just what made Doug such a great mentor, and what makes Grant such a great architect. Thank you for the tour.